Hi, BookTube. Today we are going to the theater. We're going to see a play by Marcel Pagnol. Oh, I'm not very good at putting this in camera, am I? There you are. Marcel Pagnol. There we go. Topaz. The main character is a school teacher, an ethics teacher. This is a comedy of sorts. No, it's definitely a comedy. Well, no, here at the bottom it says the drama library, but I would say this is definitely a comedy. Whether or not you think it's funny or not, we'll find out. And the first act takes place in the Moosh Academy, where our hero Topaz is the ethics teacher. Right away, Topaz gets himself in trouble with the headmaster. You see, he's broken article. Oh, before that, let me give you the two little observations here. One is the citation, the frontis quote, that's what we say. Society, you see, monsieur, if it continues, will kill the just, will kill the just people. And this is from the saying from an apprentice hairdresser. So this pithy little ethical statement is the philosophy of the hairdressers. So I think right in the up front we're being told sort of what to expect here. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that the character list, this play is from 63, but still we're not super evolved gender-wise. We've got the list of the male characters, all the named characters, and then after them, the Roger de Berreville, the venerable old man. Now we're with the people with no names, a policeman, a butler, so we got the servant. Only after the servant, now we have the female characters. The two main love interests, the Baroness, who's sort of the inciting incident lady, and then the three typists. That's the position that the females are put in from the very first page. And I would argue that that's sort of the position of the love story in this play as well. Very much of a sort of afterthoughts. Or, no, it has a function, but it's not treated with great seriousness. Well, nothing really is in this play, as you'll see. So right away, Topaz gets himself in trouble for breaking Article 27 of the academy. He's teaching, basically he's tutoring his students. He's giving them extra help. And the headmaster impresses upon him what a terrible precedent this would be. If he did this, then none of the students would want to be paying all the masters for extra lessons. So that's no good. Mr. Topaz also brings in a new student, or tries to bring in a new student, Lucy's, who's going to be the connecting thread to the rest of this play. Lucy's nephew, she tries to bring in a new student, and the headmaster feigns annoyance as if he's doing him a favor, accommodating this student only once he finds out he's from good family and wealthy and all this other good stuff. And then lastly, we're led to know that Topaz is fond of the headmaster's daughter, of course. And he's also sort of contrasted with one of the older teachers who chooses boys at random to punish them as his sort of system to discourage bad discipline in the classroom. Topaz calls him a Borgia to show you how subtle is Topaz's ethical reasoning. He also, let's see, what else does he do here? Oh, yeah, when he gets himself in big trouble, he also is sort of set up to fail by his friend, Tamiz. So his friend Tamiz, another teacher there, acts as his intermediary with the headmaster to go and sound him out as whether he thinks he'll be approachable about the daughter. And he approaches it as if it were a theoretical, situation about a friend of his who wants to marry a general's daughter, and the principal says, what's the character of this general? And he says he has the soul of a general. I'm probably giving them too much credit here, but I do think it's interesting, this idea of this ineffective intermediary. If we're sort of meant to have some sort of comment on, intermediary ethics, and also, of course, the generality of sort of like utilitarian ethics for the general good, and this sort of thing with the soul of the general. Anyway, the intervention is so inept that the headmaster discovers that this is, of course, about Topaz and his daughter, and he is furious. And then this is the point at which Topaz is called to his office with the Baroness, because the Baroness's son, who has a naught, has a 0 score, surely there was some error in the grading book, and wouldn't we like to correct that error? And the headmaster gives him like 7 chances, but of course, Topaz, being Topaz, says, I can't invent an error, and so he insults the Baroness by speaking to her quite frankly and saying that her son is sort of not a good student and this sort of thing, and gets himself fired. So this leads us into Act 2, and in Act 2 we are going into business, and the connection is Lucy. So Lucy also has Topaz tutoring her nephew, and he comes to her and says that he has rather more time in his schedule now. His schedule's opened up. He can do the extra lessons after all. And somehow the issue of money comes up, and he says, yes, his salary has been commensurately reduced with his workload, by which, he means he's got no salary. So he's at odds, and luckily for him, well, unluckily as it turns out, Lucy might need him, because Lucy is in bed with Regis. Regis is a deputy member of government, and he is a corrupt one. And he has something over her, or so she claims. And this is just a beautiful indication of how naive our hero is, that he believes her, and he says, all you have to do is go to the magistrate and say that this man has something over you. The ring of truth rings true, or something like this. She knows better, and she says she got no choice. But yeah, anyway, she's along for the ride with this fellow, and they need a go-between to sort of sign off, because the deputy can't put his own name on these contracts where he's selling these things at inflated prices to the municipality. So his regular guy, Roger, falls out with him because he wants more money, and they think, and Lucy puts forward, hey, why don't we use this Topaz fellow? He's total naïf, and now Regis is a little skeptical. He says, look, you think everyone who's dressed poorly is honest. He says that he's seen poorly dressed people go to the gallows. But nonetheless, they bring him in. They have him sign for these sanitary machines or something like this. He makes a lot of money doing nothing, of course. And of course, he thinks, he's so naive, he thinks this is charity, that they're giving him charity. This is their way of giving him charity, that they're just having him play this fake role. Roger disabuses him of this by having him go and look in the files, and he finds out that he is, in fact, abetting a crime. And of course, he's not going to be down with that. But he's talked into it because, lo and behold, he's fallen into love with Lucy. Pretty quick. All right, so I'll give you that love scene in a minute because it's pretty funny. What else? The office is quite funny. There's secret doors. You sort of picture like a farce play with everyone, the entrances and exits in the various doors. There's a fair amount of comedy around the scams. Um, the deputy's so ignorant of the specifics of the deals that he writes gladiators instead of radiators in the place of some of the contracts. One of their schemes, just to give you an idea of the sorts of business they do, is pissoir. So they put in these public conveniences in for the public good and in the public way, and they put them in front of cafes in summer, and the stink of these, WCs is such that the cafe owners would basically the pay them to take these conveniences away, and then they go and put them in front of another cafe, and they pay them to take it away. And so there's ongoing scam with that. Funny, funny. All right, let's see what else. So here's the love scene. Let's see if I can find that. Roger's a bit of a philosopher. I like his observations. He says that he calls Topaz a holy fool, an idiot. What is the quote here? 67. I'll give you some of the actual quotes from the dialogue. It's pretty amusing at times. He says, he says, look, I know, my dear sir, in business, it's often a good thing to look like an idiot, but you're carrying it a bit too far, he says to Topaz, when he starts to figure out that this Topaz is not sharp on the uptake. And then there's also a bit of comedy when they're looking for other person to be used as a go-between. They mention this guy Faubert, which is kind of funny. Faux means false, like Faubourg is how you would say a false city would be a suburb in French. They say, oh, you could use your brother or you could use your father if you knew who he was. Oh, but your brother's in jail. So all of Regis's family apparently is not too good. And there's a foreshadowing here too, because it is said. So we've set up the straw man, right? We've got this foolish ethics teacher, and now we're going to set up the scheme. Castelbenac, that's Regis says, my dear girl, you obviously haven't studied the problem. There's nothing so sticky as the choice of a go-between. If you use a morbidly honest man, he refuses most of the deals you put forward. And if you use a modern-minded man, he's apt to carry his modernity to the point of stealing from us ourselves. After all, the transactions are made in his name. We can keep the profit, and as you can imagine, he can keep the profit. We can't take him to court. So you can figure out what's going to happen with perhaps with Topaz, but why? Why would Topaz do that? Would Topaz do that? Seems out of his character. And his name, his good name, Topaz. What is the meaning of this name? All right, let me give you the love scene if I can find it here. Here we are. Falling in love. Here's how he falls in love with Lucy. Oh, sorry, I lied. This is when Ernestine comes back in. We'll spare that for a bit. So there's not even 4 lines of dialogue for his falling in love with Lucy. It just sort of happens. Perhaps we're meant to believe that it's been happening since his, he knew her beforehand as a client, as a parent, or an auntie. So anyway, he's in love with Lucy. This is inconvenient. First thing got to do is got to change his hat. So there's a lot to do with dressing. Later, when he has his change of heart, he's all dressed up. Gloves is also another symbol that pops up quite a bit. And then the act break of Act 2, it's a 4-acter. The act break of Act 2 is interesting. It sets up the tragedy, wherein she's in love with him. He's in love with her, excuse me. Muck in the mire. Ah, yes. Let me just find that act break for you. Here we go. So, if this were a tragedy, this would be the setup. You know, when you have Greek tragedy, right? You have these two values. You know, you must avenge your father's death, but you can't kill your mother. You know, two values, both of which are absolute, but they are in opposition. And what is that for this play? Well, it's a bit of a straw man as well. So Topaz says, what a conflict between love and duty. Because he's just said, look, I know the gig's up, I know what your scam is. And she says, look, I'm compromised, and please don't rat us out. What a crossroads. If only I had time to weigh up the pros and cons. So now we head into Act 3. Now, in Act 3, we have the return of, one other thing with the glove that I mentioned, 77. That's an interesting thing here. It says, at this point, there's the first indication that the Topaz might react to this hard place that he's in. He's talking to the secretaries who take huge advantage of him. They get drunk, and the typists, excuse me, and they're playing dominoes and various things, and they want to bring a piano in. And he says, "Well, if it were up to me, it'd be fine, but this Regis doesn't like it." And then they said, "But we're bored. Don't you have any work for us?" She says, "Well, I might have a letter for you to dictate to you next week." And then she sort of objects to that level of work. And then he says, "Look, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. Let me tell you that the velvet glove conceals a hand of iron." And later on, he's going to be contrasted to Regis. He's the straw man, and Regis is the man of steel. And then, of course, they're going to change places, as you probably guessed. All right, so, so here now, Mush returns. He comes into the office. He says, "Oh, my good man, since you left us, since you chose to leave us," you'll remember that he was fired unceremoniously. I've heard that you've come up in the world, and I wonder if you would help me out. I have a tragedy at home. My daughter she's heartsick. She's got an illness. And of course, it turns out that this illness is that she is in love with Topaz. And of course, she's waiting in the outer room. And here's where we have this falling in love between Ernestine and him this time. Pretty funny, I thought. To what you asked him for, I know I shouldn't say yes so quickly, but I don't want to make you worry. The answer is yes. And of course, he hasn't proposed. He's just been reminded of his proposal. And then later she goes, Henri, my name is Albert, he says. All right, so now this is where the worm turns. Topaz says, "No, look, I see through this," and basically sends them out with a flea in their ear. And it's totally unmotivated. It's totally unprepared. It's just, we're at the end of Act 3, and it's time for Topaz to have his big change of heart. And he does have one more moment of naivete. What does he say? It's so ridiculous. Anyway. And we have another foreshadowing here. So, preparing the end. Here we have doom and gloom ready to come. What's going to happen? Here we go. Well connected. I've seen people locked up who are on familiar terms with cabinet ministers. This is Susie saying this. Susie, have I been calling her Lucy all this time? Susie, sorry. And God, you don't even get her name right. Talk about disrespect. All right, so, and it's quite funny because they're saying, that was during the war. but people, it's back to normal now. These things don't happen. So we don't know in the end. Is everybody going to get away with their schemes? But I like to think that there's a hint here that maybe there will be some justice eventually, and the people on terms with cabinet ministers, which comes to include Topaz, do get their comeuppance in the end. All right, so Act 4 is a little bit of an afterthought. Tamiz returns, and so you have an opportunity to have an interesting chat between Tamiz and Topaz. And at first, Tamiz won't believe. He comes to warn Topaz about how his reputation is suffering, that he probably doesn't know he's caught up in some shady dealings. And at first, he just won't even believe Topaz's confessions. And Topaz keeps saying, no, I know all about it. No, I am not there. These are not doubtful deals. They are dirty deals. And he even says to him at one point, he said, because he's all shaved, he's clean shaven now, he's dressed, tailored suit, got the kid gloves, right? And he even tries to tempt, that's how he tries to tempt Tamiz. He says, I hate to see you with chilblains on your hands giving these lessons, and looking through the window at these velvet gloves. Leads me to wonder which one of them was looking through the window of the gloves. Was it Topaz or was it Tamiz? But anyway, Tamiz is not tempted by this, or he's not convinced by Topaz's new reasoning, but which I'll share with you as the last quote here. But he does say, I didn't believe you at first, but you look like an actor from the Comédie Française, he says, because he's all clean shaven and everything. So yeah, so here I'll leave you with this quote. One of the things that he says that Topaz says to Tamiz here, he says, but you're the one that's been stolen from, because you deserve them and you haven't got them. He's trying to tell him, you go, you're going to steal these, because Tamiz says, well, how am I supposed to get these rabbit fur gloves? I'm not going to steal them. They cost 60 francs. And Topaz says, but you're the one that they're stolen from, because you deserve them and you haven't got them. Go and make yourself some money. So that's where Topaz lands up in the end. I'll let you guess if he gets, let me get her name right now, Susie, if he gets Susie in the end. It's got some laughs in there. If we're really generous, we could say it's got a little bit of philosophy. But it's a broad farce play with straw man characters set up in situations to make big decisions and changes according to the act breaks and things like that. So I don't know. It's the first play I've ever read by Marcel Pagnol. It's got a very good reputation. So I'll have to read some more to see if this is typical of his work. But there it is, Topaz by Marcel Pagnol. Play in 4 acts. Curtain.